Have you ever taken a road trip, been traveling along, even asked Siri for directions, but after a while you discover you're on the wrong path, you're going the wrong way? Well, that's what we want to look at today. And we must examine our lives right now. What path are we following? Are we going the right way or the wrong way? Because you see, as Jude continues to paint this picture of the ungodly faults inside the church, who we know defile the flesh, reject God's word, his authority, and revile angelic majesties, Jude comes along in verse 11, he says, woe to them. Do you know why? Well, because Jesus is the way to the Father, the only way to the Father. But the ungodly faults inside the church are following three other ways: the way of Cain, the way of Balaam, and the way of Korah. That's what we want to dig into today. Now, Genesis 4 gives us the commentary for the way of Cain, and it shows us that Cain came to God his way, not God's way. Now, to help you understand this, you need to go back to Genesis 3, and in verse 21, see that after Adam and Eve sinned, God came along and made garments of skin for Adam and Eve to clothe themselves with. Do you know what those garments of skin would have been? Well, most scholars believe it's the death of an animal or animals, a blood sacrifice in place of the death of Adam and Eve, which gives us a glorious picture of the death of Christ in our place for our sin. Well, now Adam and Eve would know that the only way that they could approach God now was through a blood sacrifice, and they would have taught their son Cain this. But Cain came to God his way, on his terms, by the works of his hands, rejecting God's authority. And then when his offering was not accepted by God, he became angry and he killed his brother Abel. That would have been an immoral act, defiling the flesh. How do you and I approach God? Do we come our way or his way through the blood sacrifice of Jesus Christ? Well, the second way is the way of Balaam. And Balaam was a prophet who practiced divination and was greedy for gain. And he influenced others to compromise truth and sin. Do we do that? Do we take the freedom that God has given us and just live as we please? Do we compromise truth for the sake of popularity, money, sexual gratification, personal gain? These are things we need to look at. The third way is the way of Korah. And Korah was a Levite, not a priest, but wanted to be a priest. He actually wanted to be the leader of God's people. And so he stirred up a rebellion against God's chosen leaders, Moses and Aaron. Are we guilty of doing that? Join me today and let's learn truth. Truth about these three ways: the way of Cain, the way of Balaam, and the way of Korah, where it shows us that people put God's word on the back burner. They reject his authority and they become their own authority.